Hey, fantasy football friends, it's not too late to join the 450,000 people that have already downloaded Draft this season. You get to play in a real live snake draft, but you're done in under 5 minutes, and they last for just 1 week. You can join one right now for week 3 and draft against myself and Tags. The best part, play for cold, hard cash. All new players get a free entry into a real money draft when you make your first deposit, but you have to use the promo code PROS. That's right, play for a real money game for free just by using the promo code PROS, and it gets even better. Draft is so sure you'll love it that they're even offering FantasyPros listeners a money-back guarantee up to $100. Just search Draft in the App Store or go to draft.com and play for free right now with the promo code PROS. Hey everyone, welcome back to the FantasyPros Football Podcast. I'm Bobby Sylvester with Mike Tagliere, as always, and today we have a DFS episode for Week 3 Sunday slate. But first, Tags and I are going to take 5 minutes to do one of these live snake drafts on playdraft.com. Tags is going to be using the draft app. Tags, how's it going, man?
It's going well, Bobby. I'm excited to do this. When I was told that we were going to be doing this like live during the show, I was like, this is cool because I did one the other day and it was like my first time trying the in-season one. I know that you've done a few of them, but this in-season one is really, really fun and it went a lot faster than I thought it was. It was like you have to think on your feet, man.
Yeah, it is. It's great stuff. I love doing these drafts, and I do several of them every week. I'm not just saying that because they're one of our sponsors. Like, they're one of our sponsors because we love them. It's an incredible site, and I was actually kind of nervous about this. So Tags and I just did the draft a few minutes ago because, you know, these drafts do move quick. You have 30 seconds to make your pick, and I want to give sound advice while making the right pick so I can win some money. So we did the draft. We wrote down all our thoughts, and we're going to go through it. And Tags and I are making a bet on today's show. He doesn't know this, however, but I'll let him make up, who wins what and whatever. Just tell me what I'm going to win because I'm winning this thing.
I don't know if you're going to win this thing. I mean, I feel pretty good about the team I drafted, and I do want to give a shout out. You know, Bobby said it. It's not because they're a sponsor. I actually, I don't want to talk about other sites, but I was on another site doing a lot of best ball, and my buddy Britt Devine, I got to give a shout out to Britt because he's like, Mike, hop on here, like legitimately, just try it out. And he's like, and I promise you're going to love it. The interface is fantastic. You could do it at the PC, you could do it on your phone, and like I'm not kidding.
It's beautiful.
It really is. It's one of the it's one of the best designed apps and websites that I've seen for fantasy football, and I had a blast doing this, Bobby. But my team is lights out, man. You're gonna have problems dealing with this. I cannot believe that Marshawn Lynch fell to me in the 3rd round.
Yeah, that wasn't cool. So Tags got really lucky, as usual. I mean, he's been really lucky with the Sammy Watkins, Mari Cooper bet so far this season. That's going to change here soon. But I got the 10th pick out of 10. Tags is picking 8, so he's going to just be able to snipe all my players. I'm going to have to reach for people and everything being on the turn. So here's how it works. We need to draft 5 players, 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers. It can be a wide out or a tight end as your receiver. So I'll mostly be ignoring tight ends unless like Gronk drops really far. Since Gronk is like the equivalent of a number 15 wideout. He'll probably be drafted too high for me, but I'll tell you what, Tags, this draft moved really quick. As I was preparing my notes, there were like 5 picks within 10 seconds of this draft starting. Tags, you have the 8th pick. Who were you hoping to take?
Yeah, well, AJ Green fell to me at number 8, and I mean, I didn't know if recency bias would let Le'Veon Bell fall to me, and that really didn't happen. I didn't expect it to be fair, but I also didn't expect AJ Green versus the Packers to fall to me either. I think people are severely underestimating this Bengals offense. I know we're going to talk about it during the show today. I really can't wait to talk about this because, it's so much recency bias here where people are asking me if they should trade AJ Green away for, guys like Amir Abdullah, and I'm like, guys, just relax. Seriously, it's AJ Green.
Trade him to me. If you're going to trade him, get in the league with me and trade me AJ Green.
100%. Yes. So he's my 1st round pick here.
So as this was happening, Tags, I was thinking, I'd set my draft order in advance. As soon as the draft starts, you want to have a queue ready to go. And so I had AJ Green number 4. I was ready to take him number 4. If somehow he fell to me and he started falling, I was like, oh man, this is going to happen. I'm going to get AJ Green. Of course, you sniped me in the 1st round. And, I wasn't even considering that you were ahead of me. Otherwise, I would have just taken him off my queue. I would have known you were going to take him. So I'm a huge believer in Keenan Allen this week. I hate drafting at the turn, by the way. I would love to get Keenan Allen at like pick 16 maybe 20, 22. I think he would have dropped that far. But since this is 0.5 PPR and I had to reach for him, I pulled the trigger at number 10, even with Mike Evans on the board. It's just a perfect matchup. Tags, can you talk a little bit about this matchup? Because I've read about it in your primer, and you nailed it, man.
Yeah, no, Keenan Allen, the matchup here is fantastic. Phillip Gaines is a cornerback who was benched last year. That's who's starting against Keenan Allen this week. Marcus Peters sticks at left cornerback, which means he's going to be matched up with Tyrell Williams this week. So stay away from Tyrell Williams. Keenan Allen matched up in that slot, again, with a backup cornerback. This guy was benched last year after allowing over 150 yards and a touchdown to Emmanuel Sanders on primetime television. They're playing him out of necessity. They're not doing it because they want to. And Keenan Allen, 20 targets and a 27.4% target share over the first 2 weeks. So yeah, no, this is something where I've admitted that, I was wrong. I figured that there were so many mouths to feed, but really they're just not
still might get hurt.
Yeah, well, they're just not targeting tight ends as much as I thought they might. Dontrell Inman isn't involved at all. Travis Benjamin's kind of an afterthought. So yeah, Keenan Allen, he's one of my favorite plays of the week. So I think it was a killer pick, and there's no way he would have fallen.
I thought you were gonna laugh at me, man.
No, I was. He's someone that I would have taken on the way back if you had let him fall. So yeah, it's a great pick.
I'm glad to hear it, man. And I wanted to get a workhorse running back with my other guy because they're going to move quick here. I mean, I've got 18 picks in between. So I just went and grabbed Devontae Freeman against Detroit. I know it's not the best matchup. I know he's not the best running back, but he is a workhorse. He's safe. Tags, before we get onto your commentary, who are you going to take with your second pick?
Yeah, I'm going to go. I'm Melvin Gordon here. I was sitting here trying to decide between Melvin Gordon and Marshawn Lynch, but I know that Melvin Gordon is not going to last, and Marshawn Lynch, it's potential that he would. So I'm going Melvin Gordon here against the Chiefs.
If you would have told me that, I would have said there's no chance Marshawn Lynch is going to drop to you, but it happened, man.
Yes, it did, and I'm psyched about that because Marshawn Lynch, I put a lot of stock into him last week, and he let me down. But it really wasn't necessarily his fault. It's not that he ran bad or anything like that. He did score a touchdown, but there is a bigger week in store for him against the Redskins.
He's good, man. He looked really good again.
He really did. And that's the thing is, most people will just look at a stat sheet and be like, it's okay. And he's doing fine. But Marshawn Lynch is running, with that intensity that we're used to seeing from him. So yes, he's definitely someone to trust this week.
So if he didn't drop to you, and I'm sure you had a backup plan, who were you thinking about taking there?
Honestly, the guy that I was planning on taking, I ended up getting the fourth round. That's Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks this week against Houston. Most people see Houston, they think tough matchup. No. Brandon Cooks against Houston, they're starting, two of their starting cornerbacks might be out for this game. One of them is for sure. So the backup cornerbacks they're playing, they're two undrafted free agents that they would put out there against Brandon Cooks because Kareem Jackson is the guy who plays in the slot for them. So yeah, Brandon Cooks, this could be a week where he makes up for the first 2 weeks.
Breeze is a great sneaky GPP play in DFS this week because of that. I like that pick a lot. In fact, I was planning on taking Brandon Cooks all along, but then something happened here. I just thought, well, there's no way I'm going to get a running back that's worth anything. The difference between these guys and what's going to be left in another 20 picks is really small. It's just kind of a crapshoot at that point. But one guy did fall to me, and it's Leonard Fournette. Again, not a good matchup. I'll take the workhorse. I've got two workhorse running backs. They're going to get 15 carries, maybe 20. And I'm happy with that. And then I was hoping to get a quarterback. I really like Derek Carr against the Redskins this week. He's my number 2 quarterback. Matthew Stafford's my number 3 at home against the Falcons. Derek Carr was taken. He's who I was planning on taking, but Stafford's still there, even with Matt Ryan on the board. Got to take Stafford because look, I already have Devontae Freeman, and the chances that the Lions are going to let both Ryan and Freeman go for a big game is pretty small. So I'm going to spread it out, get Matthew Stafford, and then hope a decent wide receiver makes it back to me in round 5.
Yeah, no, it's not a bad plan. I actually, I want to save some stuff for the show. So I'm just going to, I'm going to leave I'll say that I drafted Russell Wilson with my 5th round pick. And there's been a lot of people asking me about him this week because they saw my rankings, and where I have him. So I'll talk more about him once we get into the show.
Yeah. And so, in the 5th round, I really wanted DeAndre Hopkins. He was top of the list for me. Didn't think he was going to make it, and he didn't. So, I had a couple other options. Terrell Pryor, Amari Cooper, Golden Tate. Part of me wanted to just take Cooper in case he goes off. That way I don't feel too bad about the bet when that happens. Cause there's a possibility. Cooper's a great receiver. It could happen. But the better play here is Terrell Pryor, who should get a ton of targets and a good matchup against Oakland. So he's my 5th pick. Tags, why don't you tell us what your team looks like and what your projected points are, and we'll let the listeners decide who is the better team.
Yeah, so my starting lineup is Russell Wilson at quarterback, my 2 running backs, Melvin Gordon and Marshawn Lynch, and my wide receivers, AJ Green and Brandon Cooks. I feel like in a 10-man league, obviously you're going to look pretty stacked, but I feel like all these guys I have on my team are, top 8 options at their position, so I feel pretty good about it. It is saying projection is 67.5, but hey, I didn't make these projections.
I'm looking at your team tags, and I think it is almost as good as mine, which is really saying something because my team is just awesome. I was projected for 72.5, which despite picking 10th is number 2 out of 10. So I've got Matthew Stafford face Atlanta, Devonta Freeman at Detroit, Leonard Fournette face Baltimore, Keenan Allen face Kansas City, and Terrell Pryor face Oakland. So that's my team. You guys can tweet at us at Mike Tagliere NFL and at Bobby Fantasy Pro. Let us know whose team is going to win, and we'll report back to you next week after I take home the big prize. It's a $45 winning, so it's going to be fun watching this.
No, absolutely. And by the end of the show here today, we're going to figure out what this bet is. Maybe we'll have our guest help us out with that.
That sounds good. So guys, that took like 10 minutes, and that was with Tags and I doing all of our commentary on all of it. The draft actually took 4 minutes and 30 seconds. I timed it. It was sweet. We had a lot of fun, and we both like our teams, even though we had bad picks. Our guest today to talk about DFS, we're going to be talking about the main Sunday slate, excluding that Sunday morning game in London, and who would really pick any of those players anyway? It's the Jaguars offense going. So we're going to be talking about that for FanDuel, DraftKings, and our guest is Christian Abbonizio of DailyFantasyInsider.com. Christian, thanks for joining us.
Hey, you guys. Thanks for having me on. Really glad to be here.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. And we were just talking about it. We just did this play draft, and it's like a snake draft, 5 rounds. We did it with 10 teams, and we need terms of a bet. So Christian, can you give us a good one?
Yeah, okay. So here's something that I actually did with a buddy of mine. It plays a little bit on your personal fanhood, whichever teams you guys are supportive of. I don't know. I'm a big Eagles fan, and my buddy's a big Giants fan. So before the season started, we agreed to whoever had the better divisional record at the end of the season would have to wear the other team's jersey with booty shorts and wear it around for 3 days, so that it looks like they're just wearing the jersey. So that's what we did, and obviously you'd have to do it based on the results of your fantasy league. But we're excited about that one, and I'm especially excited given the Giants start.
Yeah, that's real good. And here's the thing: Tags and I both work from home. Like, the only ones who would see us is our family. So, I don't really mind doing that so much, especially because I'm going to win anyway. But I really don't want to wear any kind of jersey from Chicago. I'm a St. Louis guy, which means I'm a Jaguars fan. But actually, that's not what it means.
Bobby, that's what you're worried about? I'm thinking about the booty shorts, and I have an 8-month-old son that I'm trying to set good examples for. And I'm not
I think family might be the most embarrassing in some ways.
100%.
I don't know.
No, this was the worst idea ever, Bobby. Thank you for doing this. But
well, I mean, it's not like set in stone. We can get different terms.
I'm winning this, so I look forward to seeing booty pictures.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to show my booty, man. I'm just going to show the jersey. Come on, Tags. Gross, dude.
We are like 10 minutes in. This show is off the rails. So let's get back on track here.
Okay, guys. So what we're going to do, we're going to go position by position here. And we're going to start at quarterback. We'll go high-priced guys, mid-range guys, value players. So let's start with the high-priced guys. It's Aaron Rodgers face Cincy or Tom Brady against Houston in cash games. And I know a lot of people are going to say Tom Brady against Houston, but Tags and I were just talking about it. They've got 2 of their starting cornerbacks who could be out, starting some undrafted rookie free agents. So it could be ugly. Guys, are you going with Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady if you're spending up on quarterback, or would you rather do a high-priced guy like Matt Ryan at Detroit, Derek Carr at Washington, or Drew Brees face Carolina?
I know for me personally, I'm looking at Derek Carr. That game is projected the highest point total between the Redskins and the Raiders, and I think that either of those quarterbacks are good options. And Carr, especially, the thing to love about Carr, in my opinion, is the ability to stack him with his elite receivers. So there's questions if you go for a guy like Tom Brady. Obviously, that could be a sneaky good matchup. But you never really know what the Houston defense is going to bring to the table. They have so much depth. Even if they're starting some question marks, you never really know what you're going with there, and you're also never really sure what you're getting out of the Patriots receiving core. So. I think the problem with Rodgers, in my opinion, I think he's a good play as well, but the concern is that they'll get up really big over Cincy, and they'll get up early, and then they'll just stop throwing the ball.
Yeah,
which really hurts his fantasy impact. But if you're looking for a shootout, and you're looking for those big fantasy numbers, I'm loving Derek Carr this week.
Over under 54.5 this week. I like Aaron Rodgers. He's my number one quarterback, but he's $900 more on FanDuel. Then you've got Derek Carr, who's a lot cheaper. He's in that big matchup, and he's my number two quarterback. So Derek Carr's really interesting to me. I'm leaning Aaron Rodgers right now, but you make a compelling case. Tags, who's your guy?
Derek Carr, 100%. Like, it's so we obviously don't discuss our picks before we get on the show. We'd like to keep it like we have no idea who Christian was going to pick. So to hear him say Derek Carr makes me feel good too, because again, this game is projected to be high. He just threw 3 touchdowns on 28 pass attempts. He's going against a Redskins defense that is down 2 of their starting linebackers from last year. Sua Cravens, who is no longer with the team, he just decided to up and go, and that Mason Foster, separated shoulder, he's missing this week. So they're down 2 linebackers. They've already struggled over the middle of the field. So Derek Carr has so many playmakers at his disposal. The Redskins have already allowed 8.3 yards per attempt to the combination of Carson Wentz and Jared Goff. They've also, if you go back, dating back to last year, the Redskins have allowed 7 of the last 10 quarterbacks they've played to throw for at least 300 yards. Derek Carr is like, I think he's safe for cash, and I think he's great for tournaments. And I mean, we're going to talk throughout the show, but I think you could do a game stack here where there's a lot of players from this game that I like.
So in the mid-range, I like Matthew Stafford at home against Atlanta, but my top play is Kirk Cousins at home against Oakland. You already mentioned that game. And Phillip Rivers at home against the Chiefs. Is there someone that stands out to you, Christian?
Another guy that I like in that range, he's a little higher than Cousins, but that's Big Ben. I think that's a really enticing matchup. You got a really big split between one of the best pass blocking units in the league in Pittsburgh and one of the worst pass rushing units in Chicago. So, I think the concern with Chicago is traditionally they do a really good job of cutting off number 1 wide receivers, which would, suggest maybe Antonio Brown's not so high this week. But at the same time, given that split on how much time Roethlisberger should have to throw the ball, I'm kind of all over that this week.
I kind of like his ownership being lower too because of the narrative that, he's not so good away games. It's Ben Roethlisberger. He could go nuts on Chicago this week.
Well, I think the only concern here is the blowout factor, right? You talked about it with Rodgers and the fact that I don't see the Bears in any way or capacity. I'm actually a Bears fan, Christian, so yeah, yay me, right? But the Bears defense is pathetic. They've lost their starting linebacker, and then on top of that, they lost their backup starting linebacker. So they're just really shallow at linebacker right now. They're not going to generate a pass rush. Ben Roethlisberger is going to have time, but it's the same concern that we had with Matt Ryan and Jameis Winston, where the game gets into blowout fashion relatively quick, and they just lean on Le'Veon Bell for the rest of the game, which is why Bell, we'll talk about that, the running backs, but Bell's my favorite play. I think he's well worth his price this week. And Roethlisberger, it's been well documented that he struggles a little bit on the road. And the Bears actually last year at home, like, believe it or not, all 3 games they won were at home, and they were limiting quarterbacks quite a bit at home. So I think this is more of like a Le'Veon Bell game. I think Roethlisberger is safe for like a cash game quarterback, but if you're looking for like a tournament play at that price range, I'm going with Russell Wilson. And I know that, nobody wants to hear that because nobody wants to play Russell Wilson right now. Well, newsflash, guys, I've written about this, and the fact that Russell Wilson, it's now 6 years in a row where he struggled in the first couple weeks. So whatever the reason, he just needs to knock the rust off. He needs to get his mind right, whatever. But week 3 is when he started turning things around. And going against Tennessee has one of the best front sevens in football when it comes to stopping the run. They do generate a pass rush, but they're lacking this year. It's only a 5.7% sack ratio, and that's one of the lower ones in the league. Granted, they're still going to be able to pressure Russell Wilson. This offensive line is bad, but they don't have an answer to stop guys like Doug Baldwin, like Tyler Lockett, like Paul Richardson, even Jimmy Graham if he plays. But I'm not counting on Graham playing this week. I don't think he does, but I still think Russell Wilson at 6,300. We know what he can do at his legs. He's healthy. It's just he started out the year slow, and at 6,300, I think his ceiling is as high as any quarterbacks in the league. 6,300
on DraftKings maybe, but 7,800 on FanDuel. I'd play him in DraftKings. I'm not touching him on FanDuel at that price point. Implied total of 20. Yeah, that's ugly. It's pretty risky, Tags. I do like the upside. Russell Wilson goes nuts 2 or 3 times every single year, but I guess it could happen this week against Tennessee. Their secondary is not very good, as you mentioned.
What's your take on them, Christian?
I agree with you to some extent. I think obviously if you're looking for, there's a big disparity between cash plays and GPP plays for big tournaments and stuff. And I like Wilson as a tournament play. I think unfortunately his floor is extremely low, so I would not play him in cash. But that 6.3 price point, especially on DraftKings, is really, really enticing for tournaments. And I think just that narrative of people being really low on him, it can really help a talented quarterback really, you can catch people by surprise sometimes with him. So, and I think that people will shy away from the matchup with Tennessee, thinking that Tennessee is generally overall a pretty good defense, and they are, but they do struggle with pass rush. It's the one thing that they rank pretty low in. So I agree, and I think that's the kind of matchup that Russell Wilson really needs, is given the strength of, or lack of strength rather, of his offensive line, he really needs a pass rush that won't really question him that much and give him time to throw. So,
for sure. So Kirk Cousins is my guy. I do like him more than Aaron Rodgers and Derek Carr for cash games, because that implied total of 26 at his price point is beautiful going against Oakland. They have some playmakers back there, but they let up a lot of passing yards. Kirk Cousins throws for over 4,500 yards every single year. I just think he's going to be, too cheap to pass up at this point. There is one guy I like more than for cash games that we'll get to, but I didn't hear either of you guys talk about Kirk Cousins. Is it just because there's better plays, or?
My issue with Kirk is honestly just the lack. You talk about how many playmakers they have, and I agree with that, but they also have some key injuries right now. So I think if Reed can't suit up, and I saw some picture of Terrell Pryor, I think, posted a picture of his foot on his Instagram story, and it is just purple. And I have no idea how he's going to play on that this Sunday, but
You should have showed me that before I drafted him in play draft just a few minutes ago, man. Now I have to wear booty shorts.
Yeah, Google the picture. It's pretty gruesome. I really, and he's super psyched about how he's going to be able to play Sunday, but I'm not. I kind of feel like that's just him overhyping it a little bit. I don't have any idea how someone could even walk on that kind of foot, let alone run around and play a full game. So that's really my concern with Cousin, but especially at his price, he's definitely a reasonable play. He's really, really solid in that high point total, and they have so many people to throw the ball to. He'll find somebody, whether it's Crowder or whoever. But I don't. That's my only question mark with him. But yeah, overall good play.
So cheap plays, Deshaun Kaiser at Indianapolis. I would not dare play him in a cash game, probably in his whole career. He just doesn't seem like a cash game kind of quarterback. Tags, you compared him to Jay Cutler. That's who he is, just with some more legs and everything. But my cash game play, I mentioned him, Andy Dalton, and it's frankly not very close. I know ESPN's been talking about Dalton might lose his job. It should go to Kaepernick, but that might just be to catch some ears, right? I mean, Dalton has been a top 10 quarterback virtually every year he's healthy. Last season he had 2 terrible games too, with less than 400 yards combined and 0 touchdowns against 2 stellar defense. So why is everyone panicking when he does the same thing against Baltimore and Houston? He gets the Packers this week. Could there be a better matchup or game script? $6,800 on FanDuel. I have so much money to spend elsewhere, and I'm still getting a top 8 QB.
I agree with you there. I also love Andy this week. But, the Red Rifle is really, he's been scary so far. Just, he's just looked bad. Obviously going up against 2 good defenses, but just the lack of composure in the pocket, it was really concerning. But now you have this whole switch of a scenario. You're bringing in a new offensive coordinator and Bill Lazor, who has been one of the most pass-happy offensive coordinators in his time. Back when he was with the Dolphins, they threw for the 9th and the 5th most passes per season over the course of the 2 years that he was there. So really a lot of promise with that new system coming in. Obviously, it might take some time to switch over and everyone get comfortable with it. But, I like him a lot in GPPs. I guess maybe I'm a little nervous about playing him in cash, but I think definitely his upside is honestly as high as anyone on the slate.
I would tend to agree. This is a get spot right for them. And, talking about the offensive coordinator getting fired, AJ Green speaking up and saying that he needs to get targeted. If you go back and look at the last couple of years, AJ Green and Andy Dalton, when he targets him, he does extremely well. And this is a matchup where Demarius Randall has no business covering AJ Green. Julio Jones was, he had a solid game last week. Was it 5 catches, 108 yards, which is a solid outing, right? But
they stopped throwing the ball to him because they were up so big.
Well, that's the thing. I think Matt Ryan threw the ball, 28 times that game? So the Bengals aren't in position to do that. This is a game where the Bengals are going to be throwing the ball a ton because they are going to fall behind because they can't stop the Packers offense, and they don't have the run game to even run the ball if they wanted to. So I think this is a get right spot for Andy Dalton, 5,100. Now, Christian, Bobby mentioned it in cash. Would you feel safe with him in cash, or do you think he's a better tournament play?
Yeah, so that's where my distinction is, versus what Bobby said. I think he's definitely a much better play in tournaments. Because of his price and stuff, you can really, I expect his ownership to be pretty low. I guess in cash, It depends on if you really need that salary. But the only reason I would kind of shy away from him in cash is because you can get a guy like Kirk for not that much more. So, and I think the level of security between those two players is pretty drastic. But I honestly, Dalton has just as much upside, like I said, as even the top quarterbacks on this slate. So one of my favorite tournament plays. Not a horrible choice for cash, but maybe not my favorite option there.
Before we move on over to running back, I want to remind you all that we have a signed Mike Evans jersey giveaway from pristineauction.com. All you have to do to enter the sweepstakes is subscribe and review our podcast on iTunes and take a screenshot, send it to us at contest@fantasypros.com. I surf around their website almost every day to look for Christmas gifts for my family and for myself. Today I saw a full-sized Lombardi Trophy replica signed by Tom Brady and a molten gold basketball signed by MJ, Larry Bird, and Magic Johnson. People, they have all kinds of great stuff, and they auction off hundreds of great items every day for more than reasonable prices. See what they have for you at pristineauction.com, and make sure to let them know Fantasy Pros sent you. That way we can keep doing these giveaways. All right, guys, so running backs. Tags, I'll let you go first because I know you've got a lot to say about Le'Veon Bell. He's your guy this week, huh?
Yeah, Le'Veon Bell, if you like, I kind of mentioned it, and the fact that Ben Roethlisberger on the road has not, and it's not just like last year or anything like that. It was the past 3 years where he really did struggle on the road. This game, if you look at the first 2 weeks, the Bears have only allowed, one passing touchdown in each game to Matt Ryan and to Jameis Winston. And the reason that's happened is because they don't have to throw the ball. You just run. We saw last week, Le'Veon Bell totaled 31 touches. The recency bias here, he's going to be a little bit under-owned. His price is never going to hit this low again. It's at 8,800. Again,
amazing.
You don't have game script concerns here. The Steelers, they'll lay it on. They need to get right. They need Le'Veon Bell running the ball well. This is a get right game for him. And again, this kind of seems like a no-brainer, but at the same time, what do we really expect his ownership to be coming off the 2 weeks that he's had?
25%. I have him right about 25%. Maybe people will wise up, but until people start buying him more often, I'm going to keep it down around that range.
What do you think on this, Christian? Do you think he's going to be higher owned than that, or do you think that's in the right ballpark?
I gotta believe it's in the right ballpark. I think people are really concerned with his production. People are so, they're so concerned with a couple bad weeks in a row. People really shy away from that. I don't think it's inherently like a really standout matchup on the surface. I think it's a great matchup when you actually look into it, but I think that this might be a week that some people look to other running backs, which I agree would be a mistake. I think he's a really good option this week.
Yeah, again, Jarrell Freeman, Bobby, we've talked about this in the show before, Jarrell Freeman going down, and he was the best linebacker on the Bears team. And then Nick Kwiatkowski, that their 4th round pick from this year, they ended up starting him there. Then he got hurt. He was rumored to be out for the year, but he's actually just going to miss a couple weeks apparently. But he is going to be out for this game. When you're down to your 3rd string linebacker against the Steelers, and again, this is a get right spot. Their offensive line hasn't produced like they have in years past. So again, this is a game where they need to get back on track. And I think it's important for them to get Le'Veon Bell going.
I love Bell and I love Jay Ajayi. I'm spending both of them on FanDuel. I know DraftKings, we don't have as much money, so we don't have the luxury of putting 2 all-star running backs in our lineup probably, but I'm going Le'Veon Bell, Jay Ajayi, and FanDuel. I mean, Ajayi ran the ball 28 times for 122 yards against the Chargers. They get the Jets this week. Christian, what do you think about Ajayi this week? That
was going to be my pick. You stole him right from me. He is absolutely my lock at running back. He's one of our DFI must-haves. You'd be just remiss to leave him out of your lineups this week. He is in such a perfect position. Going up against the Jets, who have absolutely the worst run defense in the league.
Yeah.
They have 2 linebackers, Darren Lee and Demario Davis, who have absolutely no idea how to stop the run. They have Muhammad Wilkerson is a really good interior run defender, but he missed practice yesterday, and it's possible that he misses on Sunday too.
Wow.
Which would just make this matchup absurd for Ajayi.
Oh, yeah.
Even on the other side of the ball, it's a great matchup because you look at potentially another injury concern for the Jets is Brian Winters, their right guard. And if their right guard is out, then Ndamukong Suh is just going to absolutely terrorize their offense.
Yeah.
Which, and it doesn't take much to terrorize the Jets offense. So, yes, it's the Dolphins, and yes, Vegas kind of thinks this game will stay close, but this is a perfect opportunity for a running back who plays 94% of the offensive plays and just gets so many touches and could absolutely be the definition of a bell cow this week.
Now, he's listed as questionable with the knee. I think that'll hurt his ownership. Well, I guess help his ownership because I want it to be nice and low. I'm using him in GPP games too.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I would love if that happened. I mean, that red Q shows up next to a player's name and people just panic. And the great thing about it is if you actually if anyone took the time to look up why there's a Q next to his name, which most people will not do, it's just because they're resting him. Like it's hush hush secret.
He'll probably be questionable for the rest of his life, knowing his state.
I hope so, because he'll miss more than the average number of practices per week, just because the coaching staff has blatantly said we're very closely monitoring his workload. We're going to continue to give him the ball, but we need to give him more rest if we do so. So, he's taking Wednesday off. He was on the bike yesterday. I mean, he's just taking some additional rest, and that's even better for his matchup. So that question mark, that questionable mark there is actually a huge advantage.
So there's some other high-priced guys here: Kareem Hunt, Devonta Freeman, LaShawn McCoy. I'm not really digging any of them. I mean, I guess if you guys are, you can talk about them, but I kind of want to move on to the mid-range plays. And again, Ty Montgomery sitting there. He's a nice price. What do you think, Tags?
I like Ty Montgomery. It's hard to not like him. Again, he's part of a top 5 scoring offense. He's playing like 90% of the snaps. There's nothing not to like there. The only thing with me
the game
is that...
script.
Well, yeah, the game script, they could actually involve Jamal Williams a little bit more. They do have some injuries at wide receiver. They may line him up in the slot a little bit more this week, which is not going to hurt his production. He's still a fantastic play, but I'm going back to Marshawn Lynch. And I know that I was on Lynch last week and, the game kind of blew wide open and there was no need for him. He's out there headbanging on the sideline, which was just hilarious. But looking at the Redskins, though, I mentioned, they're down 2 linebackers from last year. They're down 1 from even last week, and it's probably their best linebacker, Foster. So the Redskins, going back to last year, they've allowed 4.6 yards per carry. Over their last 18 games, they've allowed 23 running back touchdowns. I just don't see any reason. This is why when I say you could do game stack, you could do Derek Carr, you could play Lynch if you want to, and I think Amari Cooper is my choice at wide receiver, and we could talk about that if you guys want.
We'll get there.
Because Crabtree is going to be matched up with Josh Norman about 55% of the time, whereas Amari Cooper will only see him 20% of the time. So Marshawn Lynch, I think he's cash game viable, definitely on FanDuel, and in DraftKings, I think you can get away with it, even though he is 6,000. So it's not like you're getting too much of a discount on him.
So Montgomery, Marshawn Lynch. I kind of like Melvin Gordon too, which you'll never really hear me say again. But the Chiefs did give up 3 touchdowns to Mike Gillislee. Christian, who's your guy out of the bunch?
I like Gordon too. I like Lynch. I guess I have more concerns with Lynch, but I like Ty Montgomery there. I think that the game script really, even if they line him up a little bit outside, I think it's still there. Like of players that play a high percentage of, a team's offensive snaps, he is the king of them. Like he will be on the field almost all game. I mean, I would be really surprised if they brought Williams in. For more than a few snaps. Montgomery's more than capable of handling the load, as he's proven, and I think that if the game is closer than people think, then he gets a lot of good passing opportunities, and I think if it's a blowout, I think he'll still get a lot of opportunities to run the ball. So, in my opinion, it's game script proof. I love that matchup this week. My concerns with Lynch, I guess, there's just so much going on in that offense. I do like the matchup against the Redskins, who've been, struggled to contain the run, and they let up a lot of touchdowns to running backs. But, just like you saw with Crabtree last week, where he grabbed 3 touchdowns, that can kind of happen with anyone in that offense. So I don't think I like his price point, absolutely. I'm not sure he's as safe as I'd like for cash. Another guy that I like is McCaffrey, and I think that's someone that you probably will never hear me say again.
For cash games, you like him?
I like him. I'm borderline cash. I like him for GPPs a lot. My issue with cash there is that he's a little expensive. I don't know. I think I'm not a big McCaffrey fan. I'll just put that out there, but I think this week's matchup is really good. I think for some reason Vegas thinks this game's going to be I think it was 47 point total or something crazy like that. Maybe it's 49 even. So they expect this to be a really high scoring game, and I just don't really see that happening against New Orleans. But because I think the Carolina defense is good, but assuming that they're right, and Vegas usually is right, Carolina's going to have to throw the ball to someone, and if Marshawn Lattimore, especially if he's able to play, which is questionable, but if he's able to play, that bodes really poorly for Benjamin. And Cam Newton needs every security blanket he could possibly find. And, if that comes in the form of McCaffrey, I could totally see it happening.
Funchess looked pretty good last week too, but yeah, I like McCaffrey at the price point for GPP.
Yeah, there's a couple options, but, now, you could say that with any offense, and now with, Olsen going down and potentially Benjamin having a bad matchup, I think McCaffrey, this might be the only week that I'm really looking to play him.
Okay, guys, cheap players, and usually there's someone out there that you can really trust for a cash game lineup. I'm not seeing a soul that I would trust. I mean, maybe for full PPR DraftKings, full point PPR DraftKings, there's always guys out there who will catch passes like a Chris Thompson or whatever, and everyone's on him now. So, it's not too exciting, but there's two players I really like for cheap in GPP contests. One of them is Joe Mixon. They get the new offensive coordinator. Joe Mixon is a stud. Who knows? Maybe they just load him up with touches and he dominates. And then the other guy, Samaje Perine, and it's if Rob Kelly doesn't play, but I think he'll be really highly owned if Rob Kelly doesn't play, because he did get 21 carries last week. So I think he'll get a similar workload if Kelly doesn't play. If he does, complete waste. I don't know. I guess I'd still play him in some GPP because maybe Kelly will quote unquote play and then he'll get like 4 touches or whatever. So, Christian, what do you think about Samaje Perine and Joe Mixon for GPP? And is there anyone you like for cash games?
Perine's a good option, especially if Kelly doesn't play. I think they would give him a lot of touches. I think Kelly was trending upwards last time I checked, but yeah, if he's out, Perine's a good option. I guess maybe the other option that I like is Isaiah Crowell. And I think that's maybe a little bit, I'm not like locked in on him, but I think he might be the safest guy down in that 4K range on DraftKings, just because they're going up against the Colts. He was reported to have asked for more carries, which I'm sure everyone has seen by now. So hopefully that doesn't spike his ownership, but I think he might still be worth it. And I think, if there was ever a team that you could figure out how to establish the run against, it would be Indianapolis. So I think Crowell's in a good spot there, despite the fact that he hasn't had a really great beginning of the season. I think he's certainly cheaper than the other guys in that area, besides maybe Amir Abdullah, but the game script's not really with him. So I like Crowell too.
I was actually, Abdullah was this other guy. I had Crowell down. I had Amir Abdullah down. The reason I think so is because, looking at his first 2 games here, I mean, he's averaging, 16 or 17 carries over the first 2 weeks. So they obviously want him to be the bell cow back. Theo Riddick is just like a Chris Thompson in the offense. They want to limit him to a couple carries a game. He's going to catch some passes. But the Falcons going on the road, they haven't really been the same team on the road. It is a dome game, so that does help matters. But Abdullah, with the workload he's getting, there were just 8 running backs last year who saw 14 or more carries against the Falcons, and 7 of them scored 17 or more PPR points.
Ooh, man, good stat.
Yeah, so when you kind of look at running backs that you're trying to find for cheap to stick in a cash game lineup, I think Abdullah fits the role that I would look for there. And another one that's interesting too, I'll just mention, is Frank Gore at 4,200, just because I am not. So hold on. This is kind of like the episode Christian said it, where you'll never hear me on like some players like Isaiah Crowell or Frank Gore, but the matchups dictate it, right? When their prices are down this low, Frank Gore against a Cleveland Browns team, the game should remain competitive throughout, which is why you like Crowell too. But Frank Gore,
and Marlon Mack is questionable, so Gore might be playing a lot.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing. And Jamie Collins apparently is going to be out for the Browns. Myles Garrett is still out for them. So their defense is not at 100%. It's a home game. So, I mean, there's just like so many different things here that I feel like you're just guaranteed some volume with Frank Gore. But before we move on, I just want to say James White, fantastic play this week, guys. I feel like this could be like that, 80-yard, 2-touchdown type game out of him that, we see a couple times a year. And, think about what Houston does extremely well. They get after the quarterback. And what are we going to do? We only have a couple wide receivers who are healthy for the Patriots.
Burkhead's hurt too now, by the way.
Exactly. Chris Hogan was gimpy at the end of that game. So there's only so many guys that can go around here. He's playing like double the snaps of what anybody else is in the running back position. They extended him for a reason. The Texans last year, they were they were in the bottom 10 in terms of what they allowed to passing yards to running backs. Again, Brian Cushing out. There's 2 cornerbacks out for their team. It's just, this is a get right spot for the Patriots at home. They lost a home game. That doesn't happen very often with Tom Brady. This is out for blood. I do think James White, it stinks that they brought him up to 5,400 when he was 4,000 last week. And he was a great play last week, but I still think he's probably going to be worth it at 5,400.
By the way, they lost at home with the commissioner there when they had towel night with the commissioner's face and a clown nose on the towel on it. So that's especially embarrassing. Before we move on to wide receiver, I actually want to give out one more name. Darren Sproles, not using him in FanDuel, but for full point PPR DraftKings, Darren Sproles is a great play. He got 70% of the touches for the Eagles. And then on FanDuel, like a super sneaky GPP play, he's going to be 0.1% owned, if that. Wendell Smallwood, he doubled LeGarrette Blount's touches last week, and they've been wanting to work Smallwood in. He's been unhealthy. Apparently now he's healthy. He was really good in the preseason. I know it's the Giants, but for how cheap he is, there's a chance he gets in the end zone twice. Maybe they double his carries again, and he gets enough carries to do some work and get in the end zone twice. And if you're the only guy that has him, I'll tell you what, you could climb up that leaderboard in a hurry.
I want no part of the Eagles backfield. They're so unpredictable. They were unpredictable last year though too, so it's nothing new.
That's why it's GPP, man. No one's going to play them because they're thinking that. I mean, cash games, yeah, I'm on board too, but you're telling me you don't want one share of someone who could get a bunch of carries behind a good offensive line?
It's not like it's a great matchup either though against the Giants. Like if it was a matchup against the Colts, for sure I could see.
Yeah, but then everyone would be on it. Wouldn't it be 0.1% ownership?
Wendell Smallwood hasn't really shown anything yet to make me believe that he's worth like spending money on in DFS.
I'll make sure to screenshot all my winnings and send it to you when you're wearing your booty shorts.
Good luck with that.
All right, guys, wide receivers here. And Christian, we'll start with you this time. There's a bunch of guys who are high priced, not in the best matchups this week, though. So who's the top guy here?
I mean, my top guy is AJ Green, hands down. He doesn't fit the bill as a cheap player by any means, but this is probably... he's got to be underpriced for this matchup. I mean, we talked about how much we like Andy Dalton.
Way underpriced. Yeah, I've him as my number 3 wide receiver, and his price point is number 13 among wide receivers. So that's a great value.
I mean, yeah, he's a little more expensive on DraftKings, but I that's still not like shying me away from him at all. I think he's in just such a great matchup here. Like, we've kind of been through all this with this whole matchup with the Packers, but you're right. They have no business covering Green. They should absolutely, I mean, he should just torch them. They're trying to play this new weird zone thing that they got going, and it's not going to work against a guy like AJ Green. And the thing that we also love about AJ Green is just that he feasts on bad cornerbacks. He is absolutely the undisputed king of top wide receivers against bad cornerbacks. He will absolutely destroy any combination of Randall, House, or Rollins. Whatever he gets, it shouldn't matter at all. It shouldn't matter if they shadow him. It shouldn't matter if they zone him. It shouldn't matter if they double him, honestly. I think he's just an absolute stud pick here, given how much they're going to have to throw the ball. All these things that we've been through, you can't look past AJ this week.
Yeah. I don't really like Jones or Brown or Beckham or Evans at Minnesota. Tags, do you like any of these guys, or is it Green for you too?
I want to throw this out in Green too. The weird thing about AJ Green is he's been like so much better on the road over his career too. His road games during his career, 98 yards and 0.7 touchdowns on the road. We're at home 70 yards and 0.5 touchdowns. So it's quite a distinct difference, and I don't know what it is. He's like the anti-Ben Roethlisberger, the opposite of Ben Roethlisberger. But I honestly think this is a week to play Odell Beckham, and I know nobody's going to be playing him because everybody's concerned about it. They saw it on primetime TV, him not starting the game, him getting limited snaps. But in the end, he actually played quite a bit of snaps. He didn't have any setbacks. And going against the Eagles, so Ben McAdoo has reportedly said that he may give up play calling duties. Like that needs to happen because he's been awful. Like in terms of what they're doing. I mentioned this earlier. I don't know if I talked about it in the show, Bobby, but that Eli Manning right now has a career high in completion percentage as of right now. Which is really, nobody would believe that, and everybody might want to go double check that, but it's true because he's playing scared. He's holding onto the ball too long. He's getting sacked. The offensive line is not built to do that. What does Odell Beckham do that everybody knows? Matt Harmon's reception perception. He is the best slant runner in the game. He is matching up with Jalen Mills this week, guys. There have been only 2 cornerbacks in the NFL who have given up over 1,000 yards in coverage since the start of the 2016 season. He is one of them. He gets burned all the time. His 40 time is out. It's above 4.6. Odell Beckham can burn him, and it needs to happen. This is a game where Odell Beckham's going to be under-owned because of the injury concerns, and I just think that it's kind of overblown. He wouldn't have been on the field if he wasn't okay, and honestly, he played more as the game went on. They need to win this game. If the Giants lose this game, their season's essentially over. So I think they go hard. I think they go heavy at Odell Beckham, and I think he goes off.
I don't really travel down narrative street, but with Odell Beckham, I'm all over it. Like these big games when there's a bunch of drama going on in New York with the Giants and everything, he's going to step up. That's just who Odell Beckham is.
He loves it. He loves the spotlight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to get my 2 cents in about OBJ as an Eagles fan. And as an Eagles fan, I hate to say this, but yeah, I agree. I just don't think they have any answer for him.
Yeah.
I think that if his ownership projections stay low, I think he's a good play. I cannot see how they would contain him. And I think if anyone other than McAdoo is calling the plays, anyone with half a brain in their head, the only option is to throw to OBJ. Like that is the clear-cut choice in this situation, especially if the Eagles put some points up on them and they're playing from behind.
Yeah.
And with the element of desperation. Again, I'm not a big narrative guy either, but it just seems hard to believe that they have any answer for him. And this is assuming that he's fully healthy, which assumingly he is.
Yeah. Well, does starting Eric Flowers count as calling plays? Because that's the problem. Like they need to switch that pronto. It's ugly.
Yeah, their 2 tackles are without a doubt
bad.
2 of the worst players at their positions in the whole league, and it's just like all coming together in the form of one really, really awful offensive line, which has been the thing. Like, harkening back to that bet that I made with my Giants friend, I'm looking at the Giants coming into the season and looking at this offensive line and thinking there's absolutely no way they can generate offense behind these guys. I mean, Manning is terrible when he doesn't get protection. The protection on the offensive line is the reason that he has 2 Super Bowls, aside from their defense and everything else that Manning shouldn't get credit for. But
I love it.
I think that
I'm so glad to hear you say that. I get blasted on Twitter for that all the time. Hey, Christian,
no.
just so the Giants haters can find you, where can they find you on Twitter?
Oh, CJ Abbonizio. So we'll get hopefully a link to spelling my last name there is not the easiest thing. So hopefully we can get that linked or something. But that's where I'm at. And if you want to listen to some banter and slamming of the Giants, it'll be at an all-time high this week. So yeah, that is right up my alley. I've had many hourly long debates about whether Manning should be in the Hall of Fame and stuff like that. So I'm your guy for that if that's your bread and butter.
He's a lot like Andy Dalton. I mean, he's a mediocre quarterback. Okay, we'll move on before I go to, So, Tags, you mentioned Amari Cooper. I do like that matchup. DeAndre Hopkins at New England. He's got 29 targets already, man. 29 targets.
Hold on, Bobby. Can we put a bet on this that he won't finish as a top 15 wide receiver this week?
Oh, I mean, the chances of that happening are less than 50%. I mean, if you look at the top 15 wide receivers. No, seriously, if you look at the top 15 wide receivers over the past 2 weeks, 8 of them are no-name guys each week because all it takes is the touchdown or not. I mean, I can't guarantee DeAndre Hopkins is going to get a touchdown. He's a higher chance to get a touchdown. That's why he's one of my favorite plays. But top 15, I'm not making that bet.
Hopkins is like one of my avoids this week. Like, I won't touch him.
29 targets.
I'm there too. No, I hate Hopkins this week, actually. And I think that I'm all about volume. I love that normally, but not against the Patriots. The Patriots are absolutely notorious for just completely bracketing off players. And when they go up against the top wide receiver, they did it in the Super Bowl against Julio. They just bracket these guys, and so what they'll do is they shift the safety over to whatever side that guy's on, and he just plays a strong safety on that receiver all game, and it's just going to absolutely. In any other situation, Nuke is clearly the crutch of this offense. I mean, no one has a bigger percent target share over the within their team. So I love him overall. I think he'll have a good rest of the season, but not this week.
Okay. Now, I'm not playing DeAndre Hopkins in cash games. He's just one that caught my eye. Doug Baldwin's another one. You mentioned Russell Wilson, Tags, at Tennessee. I wouldn't play Baldwin in cash games, but GPP, I like him. My guy in this range, though, is Keenan Allen. I drafted him in our play draft a couple minutes ago. Face Kansas City. Tags mentioned the matchup. Christian, what do you think about Keenan Allen in the slot there?
Yeah, I think it's a good matchup. I think, they're trying to get the ball to him a lot, clearly. I think the concerns are with Melvin Gordon, I guess, playing a large portion of that offense, getting a lot of catches. But Keenan Allen's clearly the top guy in that offense as far as the passing game. And I think that the LA Clippers, as we like to call them, are they're going to have to put some points up against a really good Kansas City team, and that's probably going to have to be through Keenan Allen.
Yeah, LAC. Every time I see that, I think of the Clippers as well.
Right, it's got to be the Clippers. It's just it's every single time I look at it.
Yeah.
All right, guys, moving on to this third tier of cash. It gets kind of ugly. I mean, usually there's one or two guys that really stand out here. Last year it was Rashard Matthews every single week. There's not a guy like that at this point. Is there anyone who really stands out to you? We'll let you go first here, Christian.
Well, I think if we're looking at like the logos, I think one of the so someone that I was looking at originally was Higgins, and Rashard Higgins had a humongous week last week, and you think, okay, well, he doubled the targets of the next guy on the roster, like the next guy who even stepped on the field. And you think he's got to be in a good position. But I think it was just a product of the matchup last week against Baltimore. The one weak spot on their whole defense is their slot cornerback. And I think that, honestly, the Browns might have just smartly exploited that weakness. So I don't think that really answered your question, but that was one of the things I wanted to throw out there as like kind of
okay,
something to be cautious of.
A lot of people are going to play him, so I'm glad you mentioned it.
Yeah, so I think as far as guys that I like in that week or in that price bracket rather, I'm looking at a guy like T.Y. Hilton is one of my most intriguing GPP plays, and I guess he's just so absurdly cheap right now, and he's such a good player that it's hard to not like him. But you do, I think people will be off it because of the matchup, and I think there's just, I think he'll spread himself out, and they have a pretty good matchup. Like, the Browns cornerbacks aren't terrible, but if the Colts need to stay in this game, Hilton's going to be the guy. The Browns are weakest in the slot, just like the Ravens are, so I don't really love a ton of guys in that price range, but he is someone that I'm thinking like, okay, he could really make a difference in GPPs.
70-yard reception for a touchdown, and you're in the money with T.Y. Hilton. Yeah. I also like Devontae Adams there. We haven't mentioned him against Cincinnati, especially if Nelson or Randall Cobb isn't good to go. We're not playing 100%. Tags, who's your guy?
I'd rather go lower, like the mid-tier, like Terrell Pryor was someone that I did like. I have not seen this foot picture. I've not even heard it until here. So it's something I'm going to look into as soon as we get off, because Pryor, this was one of the matchups where I felt like his ownership was going to drop because he's looked like crap, but Oakland gets beat over the top all the time. Like that's their weakness is at safety over the middle of the field. Pryor he has not been good, but I want to go further down, I think Deshaun Jackson is very, very interesting this week. And I say that because if you look at Martavis Bryant last week, I was watching some of that game, went back and watched, and Martavis Bryant just coasted by the cornerbacks like all game long. Where Antonio Brown, he got the Xavier Rhodes treatment. That's going to happen to Mike Evans this week. Deshaun Jackson is going to burn Trey Waynes and Terrence Newman. He's 4,600. He's really cheap. And, giving another week with Jameis Winston, getting them to develop that chemistry. Like, where did we miss last week? Because he just missed, a couple touchdowns. I've talked about it before. I think Ted Ginn's in an interesting spot here. I think that going against Carolina, I know it's a narrative and all that stuff, but the matchup is actually pretty decent because James Bradbury will match up with Michael Thomas, and Ted Ginn hasn't really done too much yet. Brandon Coleman has kind of outproduced him. One name I'm going to throw out there, and I'm going to regret it. I know it right now, but I'm going to tell you that I think it's a really sharp play is Terrence Williams. Nobody's talking about him. He's $3,600, guys. Like, he's dirt cheap on DraftKings, and this is a matchup where Dez Bryant is going to see Patrick Peterson all game. We've talked about Dez's matchups before. Jason Witten is going up against a Cardinals defense that before last week, they had gone 19 games without allowing a tight end over 53 yards. So it's a terrible matchup for Jason Witten. Dak Prescott, I mean, Ezekiel Elliott coming off a really bad week. We don't know if they punish him. On top of that, he's going against a solid Arizona front. So if they're going to move the ball, which I do think that they can, Terrence Williams is kind of the answer there. So it's a really deep play, but at 3,600, if you're looking for a desperation option, I think that he's solid.
I like Williams as well. I already mentioned Devin Funchess. He was pretty good last week after Greg Olsen went out, and he's been really efficient. He's finally going to get the volume. They go against New Orleans, so I could see him having a big game. I even like him for cash games. Paul Richardson, I don't know what's going on with his finger, but it's still a nice price point for someone who starts against Tennessee. Rashad Higgins, you mentioned. Two other guys that I want to talk about. J.J. Nelson, really cheap. Jamison Crowder really cheap. I mean, I'm not in love with any of these guys, but, we have to mention some names down here. I'm spending up at wide receiver because they're just not great value plays. What about you, Christian?
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same train of thought. Like I said, there's not a ton of guys that I like in the lower price points. I think my concern with Deshaun, I agree that Jackson, Winston just missed him so many times last week, and it was a really good sign that he was getting those deep shots, and if he can connect on one of them, he's worth it. Yeah. So I do think that makes it worth it. I think my concern there is actually that Trey Waynes is actually faster than Deshaun Jackson. He runs a faster 40 time.
Wow.
So that's not it's not necessarily indicative that Jackson can't get behind him, because obviously it depends a lot more than just straight up 40 speed, but Trey Waynes is not someone that you think of normally as just like a typical speedster, but he's really fast. And that whole Minnesota defense is pretty fast too. So it's not a matchup that I really love, but it could definitely pay off with one pass. So, you can't, definitely for GPPs, I'm not looking away from him.
Yeah.
I think Crowder is the guy that I like best in that area, just because his matchup against TJ Carey isn't great, but it's not bad either. They're kind of right in the same grade spot. I think Crowder just has to become that number one option, especially if Reed's out, especially if Pryor. I'm not a doctor, so don't quote me on that Pryor thing. I don't actually know. This is just what I saw, and if my foot was that way, I would be uncomfortable. So, but who knows? It's the NFL. They could shoot him up with something and he'll be all right. Who knows? But if Pryor's not 100% and if Reed cannot play, Crowder is by far the best option in that offense.
Yeah.
So I think
he's always a great cash play.
Yeah, absolutely. He is, for PPR and DraftKings, he's a monster. And so I think, coming out in the slot they just got to throw the ball to someone. And I don't like Ryan Grant. And I don't like, Doxson or any of those guys. So
you don't love Brian Quick?
Didn't they cut him? Or is he still on the roster?
Who knows, man? Who cares?
I don't even know. Was he ever a Redskin?
Yeah, he was. They signed him this offseason. I thought he was a cut candidate. He may not have been, but I know he's not playing though.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. No, I don't like Ryan Grant. I don't know. I'd never even heard of Quick getting a snap, but yeah, I don't like him either. Yeah. So yeah, Jamison Crowder's the guy there in that offense, and with such a high point total, Kirk has to throw the ball to somebody. So I could easily see Crowder getting 12 catches, and it wouldn't be any surprise to me.
So guys, before we move on to tight end, I just want to say, if you haven't watched the Minnesota Vikings play, I know this is kind of a hot take, but I think Xavier Rhodes is the most exciting player in football to watch. It's just artwork what he does. When he's guarding these top receivers, you're going to get to see him against Mike Evans this week. It is a thing of beauty. He is just, he's incredible. So tune into that Vikings game and watch Xavier Rhodes go at it with Mike Evans. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I like that too. I think Xavier Rhodes. I watched one of those mic'd up things that the NFL does, and I think I watched one between Antonio Brown and Xavier Rhodes, and I thought it was funny. There was a couple times when Antonio Brown's on his mic saying where'd you come up with that? Because they trained together in the off season, and suddenly Xavier Rhodes just pulls out these moves that no one even knows he has in his arsenal. He's one of the most exceptional players in the league for sure. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, it looked like Brown beat him so bad. I know the clip you're talking about. It looked like he beat him. He had him by 5 yards. Rhodes was burnt. Mm-hmm. And then somehow he gets back in the picture and knocks it out of him. And
it's nuts.
He's just he's incredible. So guys, tight ends. There are so many injuries here. It's just Zach Ertz to me. There's really no one else I'm considering here. But Tags, we'll let you go first with tight end. Is there someone else for you? Or is it Zach Ertz?
No, I'll fade the chalk on Zach Ertz. I think he's a solid play, but I don't think that you need to necessarily go there. They've raised his price to the point where I don't feel so great about it. I think Martellus Bennett is the tight end that I'm going to go back to again, like another guy that somewhat disappointed me last week. But when you're seeing, 11 targets like he did last week from Aaron Rodgers, things are bound to happen. Jordy Nelson, even if he does play, he's going to be at less than 100%. Honestly, I was going to be shocked if Nelson played. I know they say that he's trending in the right direction, but why rush,
against Cincinnati? You're going to beat Cincinnati with or without Jordy Nelson, so just chill.
They should. Well, it seems like Cobb's going to be out for this game too, which eats up targets over the middle of the field. So that's why I'm saying,
Geronimo Allison, GPP.
That's the thing. Geronimo Allison, I talked about him on the waiver wire show, is that I like Allison as a talent. He's someone to watch. Like if Nelson or Cobb misses this game, Allison is a really sharp play. Just tossing him in your lineup and seeing what could happen. Because if they line him up in the slot, then he's going to go up against Darqueze Dennard, a guy that arguably should have been cut this offseason. But again, back to Martellus Bennett.
What's Bennett's price on DraftKings? Because he's not that much cheaper than Zach Ertz on FanDuel.
He's 4,000 on DraftKings.
Oh,
Ertz
okay,
is
wow.
up at 5,000, so it's 1,000 difference. And Jack Doyle, I'm down to Jack Doyle 3,600. But Martellus Bennett, if you're looking for an upside play, I think Bennett's what you're looking for. It was really weird because he looked bad last week, almost like he was winded the entire game. I don't know if he wasn't feeling well or something because he didn't look right. But the Bengals last year, they allowed 72 yards per game to tight ends, and they're still going to be without Vontaze Burfict, their best linebacker this week. So again, they show up when you go, like when people go to matchups and they look like, oh, Martellus Bennett, he's going against the number one defense against tight ends. Keep in mind, guys, they went against Evan Bayless last week, and then the week before that, they went against Nick Boyle and Ben Watson. So don't. It's
call.
way too early. Yeah, it's way too early in the season to go by that. But I do like Martellus Bennett as a solid upside play. Austin Hooper, very interesting against a Detroit team that allows a lot of touchdowns to tight ends, and they might be without Jared Davis, their starting middle linebacker. And then again, I talked about him on our sit start show. I talked about Jack Doyle at 3,600. He's kind of like a no brainer because the Browns they're so bad against tight ends. I mentioned it on the last show. 10 of their last 17 games, they've allowed at least 16 PPR points to tight ends. And Jack Doyle showed some chemistry last week with Jacoby Brissett. So look for that to continue. 3,600. It's kind of like a no brainer.
You know who's really bad against tight ends is Miami. And they get Austin Seferian-Jenkins. I'm not using him in cash games. Tags, I know you hate this. He's going to have like 1-2% ownership. I am playing him in like every single GPP lineup, not because I trust him big time, but I think there's a 15% chance he's the top value on the slate. And when you're talking about 2% ownership, man, that is a nice investment. He goes against Miami. He's got all the skill in the world. He's by far the most athletic wide receiver that they have compared to, who are they starting out there? It's a disaster. So I could see him having a huge game, getting double digit touchdowns, getting 2 touchdowns and being the number 1 tight end. It would be beautiful at his price. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but there really is a chance, and he's super cheap. So Christian, we'll let us close you out with the position. Who are your tight ends you like?
So I'll just go from the top down. I think Ertz is really expensive, which is not the thing you want to spend your salary at. Tight end's not really the spot for that in my opinion. But Ertz is in a good matchup, especially with Alshon Jeffrey getting some Janoris Jenkins treatment. So if he shadows Jeffrey, the balls have to go somewhere, and the Eagles are so pass happy and so unbalanced towards that passing offense that Ertz could easily go. He could get 10 targets, no problem. So I could easily see him being worth that high price tag. But the other guy I was going to mention was Jack Doyle. I think it clearly has become like a staple of the offense. It kind of contradicts my T.Y. Hilton pick from a little earlier, but I think that he's probably safer than T.Y. I think T.Y.'s got more upside, but Jack Doyle could easily, I think he got like 8 targets last week, and I think he caught all of them. So just a really good check down option for a pretty unstable offense. I think Seferian-Jenkins is an interesting play. 3,000 is hard to pass up. I saw some reports that they're really trying to work him into the offense, and I guess with the Jets, they should realistically be welcome to trying anything new at this point. But so I could see it happening. I would throw him in a GPP lineup, but he's also, he could also be irrelevant. So
yeah, there's a good chance he's irrelevant, more than 50% chance. That's why I'm only using him in GPP.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you there. Total GPP play.
Real quick, I'm going to mention, Bobby, before we get out of here, Zach Miller is like a minimum play that you can go after. He's got 4 red zone targets. It leads all tight ends. He's tied up there with Kobe Fleener, Travis Kelce, and Jason Witten. And honestly, there should be a lot of garbage time in this game. The Bears are lacking receiving options. And over the season, he's seeing like the most targets on this team, especially at the tight end position. He's got 15 through 2 games. So I think he's like, if you're looking for a really cheap tight end at 3,000, I think he's sharp.
So guys, we don't have much time, and defense is such a crapshoot. These turnovers, it's just kind of random. Getting into the end zone, that's how you're going to get the best defense. But we'll do a lightning round here really quick. We'll let you go first, Tags. Just make your case for one defense. Give us another one you like.
Steelers 3,400. There's no way that I can pass this up. The Bears are so bad. Mike Glennon is not very good at football. That's the best way for me to put it. The Steelers 3,400. This is like a week where you kind of have to spend up. You can go to the Dolphins at 37, but the Steelers, it's very realistic that Mike Glennon gets benched very soon. And like, he hasn't done well. He hasn't faced adversity really well before. And the Steelers are going to bring some pressure onto him. He has no receiving options. Jordan Howard is not very, it seems like he's not even close to 100%. They may be without Josh Sitton and Kyle Long this week, their two best offensive linemen. So again, I mean, I would rather, if you're playing the Steelers defense, I think you'd rather have Mike Glennon back there than Mitch Trubisky. So just be happy that Glennon's starting and hope he starts the whole game, because you'll be in for a treat.
So I've got the Eagles against the Giants. That offensive line is just so bad. It is easy in cash games. You know, they're going to get 3, 4, 5, 6 sacks. Probably get some picks off Eli Manning, who is mediocre. And then my GPP play that I like, Tennessee against Seattle at home. Russell Wilson just explodes and has some horrible games sometimes. And Tennessee has some playmakers, so I think it could be a decent one. Christian, give us your plays.
So you stole my Eagles one, so I totally agree with you there. I think that's one of the best pass rushes against one of the worst offensive lines. So all over that. Other than that, you know, I've kind of actually already said why I like my other two top defenses, and it's kind of boring, but Patriots and Dolphins. I mean, the Patriots are a great option simply because the guy that gets 50% of the targets for Houston is going to be locked up. And the other for the Dolphins, you know, like I said, with those injuries to the right guard spot, they could absolutely murder them if Brian Winters doesn't play. So it's tough not to play the Dolphins, in my opinion, but the Eagles are a good, cheaper option, and I think the Patriots are also a good top option. I mean, you know, it's kind of a no-brainer there for me.
All right, guys. Well, that's all the time we have for the show. Christian, really appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Our pleasure. And before we end this show, I just want to give myself a pat on the back. This is the first time, I don't know, it's been like, 20 DFS episodes I've done now. The very first time where I haven't talked about a Thursday night game on accident. And my producer is going to be so happy with me. I also changed the battery on my smoke detector, so it's not beeping anymore. You guys probably didn't hear it last show because Clinton's amazing. But serious props to myself. I had an awesome week. Didn't talk about Thursday, changed the smoke detector battery. So that's how we're going to end the show here, guys.
Good job, Bobby.
And for those of you listening at home, we do have 3 shows coming up next week. I am very likely not going to be here. We're having our 3rd baby. I'm really excited about that. If I am here, just bonus, and you'll get to see tags and booty shorts probably. I want to say thanks to the sponsors of today's show, Draft and PristineAuction.com. For Mike Tagliere, I'm Bobby Sylvester. Thanks for listening, and enjoy your football.
I just wanted you to watch me dissolve.